Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. Today we're going to have a fun video. So this is for our Facebook page called Utah Gardeners, and it's our container contest. What did you call it?
A container con.
Con. Yes, this is for a con. Now, I am not a container person. I cannot get these to grow in containers. They die. Put it in the landscape, I'm fine. Containers. That's why we have Brian from Olsen's greenhouse here.
Yep. I'm going to help you out. We're going to figure this out.
Thank you.
It's not that hard. We'll get it going.
I am so excited. So let's see what you have here.
So I brought you a huge selection of stuff, and some of this, Malie, is for my house. So,
oh, really?
But anything that you don't select, I'm going to take home, and we're going to figure out a container, or maybe even put it in the beds, but something. Yeah. But I brought a whole bunch of stuff. So when I do containers, I like to make it easy and start with the basics. So the structure of the container, and we do this saying called thrillers, fillers, and spillers. So our thriller is our focal point. It's like a centerpiece, but it doesn't have to be in the center. It's just a main plant, something that draws attention. A lot of people use spikes, and I brought a spike today. This is a red colored one, Red Sensation of cordyline.
So cordyline, okay.
This is one of my favorite colors. So we'll use that as a centerpiece and our thriller. And then the next one was, remember what it was?
Filler.
Fillers, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So we've got to fill around that focal point and fill up our container. And these are mounding plants, or plants that kind of get some bulk to them. That's why they fill up all that empty space in between. So once you have your thriller, you find one or two or maybe even three good filler plants, things that mound.
Okay.
So what I brought for you, Malia, is this awesome new concept we've been selling in Home Depots recently called Drop and Decorate.
So people can find this in Home Depot already done. Exactly.
So we take all the guesswork out of it. We find great varieties that work together well and put our own combination together. We grow them on, and now they're growing and intermingling in between each other.
Yeah.
And this is ready to go.
Perfect.
So we'll take the pot off. You don't have to if you don't want to.
Oh, you don't even have to take the pot off?
We'll talk about that a little bit
as we
put your container up. But we'll take the pot off, and you've got a 3 different plant combo here with Bidens.
Okay, Bidens.
Petunia.
Yeah.
And a Calibrachoa. Mini Petunia, a lot of people call them. That's a great filler, and some of these plants are like crossover plants. Like they'll fill, they'll mound and trail.
Oh, really?
So now we kind of can cross over into spillers as well.
Right.
But so that's what the Calibrachoa and the Bidens to a certain extent will kind of trail as well. But this is mostly a filler plant. It's a lower growing one, but mostly fillers.
Right.
So we got another couple.
Oh, look at this.
This is a foliage plant. You said you wanted some foliage.
Yes.
And so I brought 2 varieties of coleus.
Okay.
I don't remember which ones these are called.
Oh, look at this one.
But I like to buy flowers not based on their names. There's so many different varieties out there. I just like to buy it depending on how it looks when it's ready to go. So
yeah.
I don't always remember the variety names, but this one I love because it's tricolor, and this one will actually, that rose color in the center will kind of get brighter and and bigger as time goes on, as these leaves expand.
Oh, perfect.
So the 2 varieties of coleus we'll pick. I probably won't be able to fit them all, but that's a great filler plant as well.
Right.
Coleus does better in shade. And so what I'm going to recommend, because your planter is in the sun.
Well, it gets shade a lot of the day. It's only in the sun probably, I'd say, starting 1:30 or 2 on, but it is the hottest part of it.
And that's kind of an interesting thing you say. So you say it gets a lot of shade, but here's the thing. First of all, if it gets sun starting at 2 p.m. And it probably the sun goes down behind the mountains around 8 p.m.
That's the full 6 hours.
Yeah, that's 6 hours. You have full sun. And so you're going to, not only that, because it's that afternoon sun, it's more intense. And so really what I like to say is 4 hours of afternoon sun is worth 6 hours of morning sun.
Okay, that's good to know. That is really good to know.
A lot of people will think, I only have 3 hours of sunlight. But if it's from 4 to 7 p.m.,
that's full sun.
That's
almost
like full sun. You're going to burn up shade plants. And so it's you kind of got to play it by ear. What we're going to do, if you want to use these coleus, we're going to find a way to put them at the back of the planter, away from that afternoon sun. So we'll put them on the eastern side of your planter,
Oh,
though your
wow.
planter's on the western side of your house.
Right.
And we'll put it behind a larger plant so that it does get a lot of shade. So that's one thing we always start with is where is the container going and how much sun is it going to get? So
right.
You got to know that first and foremost. We have some other options I brought. I don't know if we'll fit them or not, but I brought a new petunia. It's a bicolor petunia.
Let's get them close so they can see.
A lot of people, when they see this for the first time, is they see the star pattern of the white.
Right.
And then I tell them, you got to look closer, but you'll find, if you look, a heart in every petal. So in between the star patterns is a red heart. And this one's called,
think it's so cute.
This one's called Amore, King of Hearts.
You can really see it on this one. Oh, he's so cute. Yeah.
So those are great filler options. Then I brought one more just because I love how bright the yellow is.
Oh, that's my favorite color.
This is an African daisy.
Look how beautiful that is.
Osteospermum is the botanical name.
And those just bloom and bloom and bloom and just never stop.
And those are great filler options. So we're going to fill around our thriller,
right?
Filler plants, and then you remember the last one, right?
Spiller. Yeah.
So spillers are just things that trail or go over the edge. And my all-time favorite is Creeping Jenny, Lysimachia. There's two colors of it, of this variety. The green one, which we have here, and then a more yellow one. It's the chartreuse green. I like the green one best, so that's what I brought today. So that's it. That's all it takes to design a good container.
Well, I'm so excited. Let's see. Now I need to learn how to plant these the appropriate way.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, let's get to that part. Okay, so here we are with my container. We've chosen the plants.
Right.
Now, I like to just plop things in the container, but what do we need to think about first?
Well, a few things. Number one, we want to consider the mix we've got. So a container always needs good drainage.
Now, do you put rocks at the bottom?
That's a bad thing to do. A lot of people think it's good for drainage. It actually, it doesn't help. It does not help with drainage.
Now, I have a
scientifically proven.
Yeah, I have a video that I will link above that talks about drainage and why that doesn't work, and I'll link it above for those geeks who like stuff like that.
So you've talked about it already,
yes.
Yeah. But we don't want, what ends up happening is you get a lot of water building up down there and it just kind of rots and then the roots won't grow down there. Okay. If it is a really deep container, our roots really only need probably 8 inches of this container in depth, but they will go towards the bottom. But if you have a much deeper container, you can fill it with other things. But in the long run, it's usually just best to use potting soil maybe the first time, and then just don't ever replace that bottom potting.
And then the top, like 6 to 8 inches, is this stuff. Let's see, because this is what you suggested.
So I recommended the Miracle Grow. There are other companies that make moisture control, but that's the important thing. This has polymers in it, and they've been around for a long time now, maybe 20 years. But these little polymers will absorb water and expand to like 10 times their size, filled with water, and then they'll slowly release it. So it does two things. It protects against overwatering and underwatering.
Then what about fertilizer? Do I need to put some fertilizer in it?
So most of the higher dollar potting mixes have a slow release fertilizer. And this one, the way you can find out, it says feeds up to 6 months. So this one has fertilizer in it.
Okay.
It's because it says 6 months, it's a slow release, and that's what all potting mixes have. They're activated the first time you water it, and then it depends on how often you water. They don't really last 6 months in our climate,
right?
So we water too much. We wash most of that fertilizer out. Blooming plants need a lot of energy.
So what kind of fertilizer do you recommend?
Anything. You could use tomato fertilizer on a blooming plant, but it is best to use like what you've got. Just some sort of blooming fertilizer will help. It's got more phosphorus in it, the middle number. So this one's high, 58 on the phosphorus. I like to use this towards the end of the crop. I usually start out with something higher in nitrogen, like an all-purpose 16,
so you can
16,
get them
16.
up to the size.
Yeah, so nitrogen's for all-around growth or a lot of green growth. The phosphorus promotes blooms. Potassium and phosphorus can promote root growth. They all have their numbers. You don't have to get that mixed up about it.
But for beginners like me, maybe
just follow the label.
Just follow the label.
Any of these will say for containers every 2 to 4 weeks, fertilize. What I like to do is just get on a weekly schedule and use half the rate.
Okay, that's easy.
So if it says 2 tablespoons per gallon every 2 weeks, I put 1 tablespoon per gallon every week.
So now how do we plant these and how do we decide where they go?
But you do have too much in here. If we want to stuff all these root balls, these all have their fair amount of soil in them. And so we got to make room for that. So the first thing we're going to do is take some soil out. So do you have a bag to put this in?
Yep.
What I like to do, we're not going to take as much as I would like, but if you're filling this up, getting ready to plant containers, is I start at the depth of my biggest pot, and then I fill in around the edges. We have a shade plant.
We do.
So that's the most important thing, is we got to get this shade. So we need it shaded by something else.
Right.
So let's start with that. We said we want to put it on the eastern side of the planter, right? So I'm going to let you go for it.
Okay.
So the eastern side,
yep,
farthest away from the sun. And let's just start with that.
Now, okay, so this is another question I had. I am a major root messer. Do you ever mess with your roots?
No.
And why not?
Rarely do I. Okay. A lot of people think they should, and they're helping the plant, and in some cases it should. I would say with bedding plants, especially annuals, it's like 1% of the time that you need to mess with a root-bound plant. Annuals just haven't been growing long enough.
Right.
Now,
look at the roots on this.
Shrubs that have been growing a couple years in their container, they're going to get root-bound from time to time, and then you need to score the roots and get them growing in different directions. Sometimes perennials get root-bound, but it's not as big of a deal. And if you do find that this one's not even close to root bound.
No, this is beautiful.
If it were root bound, just a score that way and that way will be enough to get them growing in a new direction.
Okay, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to.
So the most important thing is just get the top level of all your plants the same.
So about
the top level of the soil.
So about right there. Right?
Wherever you want. And I always make sure it's a half an inch or an inch below the top, so that a little bit of extra water can get up there when I water, that it will seep into the roots.
Okay.
And not
so
overflow.
Now do I need to cover it more, or are we going to cover it later?
No, cover it later.
Okay.
Thrillers, a lot of people think let's put them right in the center, right in the middle.
That's
and you
what I
can do
always
that. I only do that if I can see the planter from all sides. And this one you
okay.
can.
Yeah.
But if you're putting it against a wall or against the garage, you know,
Then you
the
can
side of the
put it
garage,
to
you
the
can put it
back.
to the edge too. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't have to be in the middle. But yours is probably best in the middle. But just make sure you get the tops lined up.
Is that about right? I can't
Yep.
see. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Now we have a hole in there, okay?
Right.
With
so
no soil. We need to get some soil in there. I like to put more plants in my planter than most people. And so I will just make sure I remember where all those holes are, and I'll feel and get soil in them. What you don't want is the edge of the roots exposed to air, because then it will dry out faster.
Yeah.
Yep. So the next one then I start with my biggest plant root balls. So we've got our drop and decorate.
Yep. Now this one's going
Now
to be
we talked about we could leave this in the pot. This has got a pretty big root ball.
Right.
You could leave it in the pot, and then
will that like control the size, or what will it do?
It won't control the size. It just makes it easier, but it makes it really easy if you ever wanted to switch it out mid-season for something else.
Yeah.
This is a great all-season bloomer, so I'm going to suggest we remove the pot, but you don't have to. So what I like to do.
What's the best way with this one? Because it's too big.
Even if you got a hurt wrist and a
yes.
A splint on, you can still do this. It's easy. So I like to get my fingers spread apart and get them in and hold the top of the root ball, okay? And kind of wiggle my fingers around as much of the edge of the stems as I can, so I have a good support of it, and then turn it upside down. And then sometimes it takes a helper, but you didn't need one.
Yeah.
And just take this off, and just like you did. Yeah, it's as easy as that.
Okay, perfect.
You can do that with pots like this. You can do it with big hanging baskets even.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And one person can plant something as big as this. I've got enough room for one shovel blade in this pot right here.
And we have a lot.
But this is almost 2 shovel blades.
Right.
So this is cool. It doesn't matter what shape the roots are in. They don't have to be round.
Right.
So you're going to squish them.
And I'm not going to
You're going to change this from a circle to an oval. Yep. Now be careful not to rip stuff apart, but you're going to change the shape. Yeah.
Like that?
Exactly.
Oh,
now
my
you've
God,
made a wedge.
that.
You've made a wedge that'll fit right in there. And you can shove it down, and remember, as long as we get the tops the same.
Yeah. So let me see here.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
And remember, this is a filler and a spiller, so it's great that we have the Calibrachoa trailing over the edge.
Yeah.
Okay. So before I do the spillers, because the root ball is so small, now I'll come in and fill in some gaps. So what I like to do grab your spade or shovel. I like a more scoopy one here,
which I don't have. So.
Which is fine.
But we do have this.
You can use that too, but I like the shovels because you can get in and under foliage better.
Okay.
I like to scoop the shovel down and hold it with one hand just like that, and then feel my way in and push it into the gaps. And you want to compact it a little bit because the more loose it is, the more easily it washes away from where you want it. But not too much to where you're just shoving soil in. So it still needs to be loose. We still want air to our roots. We want water to get in there. So you don't have to pack it in tight, but you don't want to lose a lot of it and wash it away. Now, sometimes you'll find that you've broken stems and stuff and they'll die. Don't think you did a bad job. It's just that's what happens, and they'll regenerate and grow for the most part. Okay, like this one might be broken a little bit. It is. I can see right here.
Oh, there it is. It's broken almost completely off.
Which is fine. Like I said, every time you pinch a plant, and coleus is really easy to do this, you're going to get 2 new leaves coming out of that one pinch point. So 2 new stems will come up and put a lot more leaves out.
Oh, perfect.
So that's fine. So now I would say maybe we'll just fill this side with Lismachia. So you've got 6 plants there, a 6-pack. I like to dump it upside down because it's a ground cover, it's really durable, and then squeeze all the cells out, loosen them all up, and just dump the whole thing out there, just like that.
Okay.
Yep. Now some of these I noticed were not rooted very well. It's fine. They're not rooted into their final container. Right. This one has enough roots, but there was 1 or 2 in there that were smaller plugs. That's fine. Just bring all that soil from that cell and place it in. Ground covers by nature root really well. Okay. And then one other thing about ground covers, most of them will root out of the stem. And
really?
So what I like to do is just to get them established the first time is I'll lay like this is a long stem.
Yeah.
You'll get roots out of all of these nodes along here. And so sometimes I'll weave it underneath the canopy of all the other plants and let it come out.
Really fill in.
And then it'll start spilling out from all these different areas. So it'll make it a little more full that way. It'll take longer to root, but just lay it on top of the soil. Everywhere the nodes contact soil, they'll send roots out. Now, if you get your bedding plants home and they are dry before you plant them, I do like to put water into the bedding plant root balls.
Okay.
Maybe an hour before I dry so they're not sopping wet. But when they're super dry and you plant them into a container like this, they tend to have a harder time bringing in moisture than the outside soil. Okay. And so it'll take a long time for them. They could dry out to the point where they die before they start to bring in, even though you've watered your container.
So how often should I be watering this?
So depends on how much sun it gets. It depends on how big the container is. It depends if it's windy. Best way, like if you have a plastic container, is just to lift it. And you don't have to lift it all the way, just kind of tip it. And you can tell if it's really heavy or really light. If it's really light, it's super dry. Okay. Right. So plastic containers, that works well with. The finger test works good too. Okay. So you just want to see if it's cool or moist, about an inch down, and you can tell if it's dry in the top, an inch down, that it needs water. The best thing is just to get on a schedule though. Yeah. It's like we said with the moisture control, it's kind of harder to overwater, and so always make sure. The biggest problem everybody has is underwatering containers. Yeah. So they drain out a lot. And because we water them so much, they lose their nutrients. So it's better to overwater and over-fertilize usually containers.
Yeah, because it's not like they're in the soil where they have an abundant reservoir. Right. They just have a small reservoir.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. So everybody on the Utah Gardeners website, we are having our container contest because we hit 10,000 subscribers. Now we're well above that.
Yeah, we're getting like hundreds a day.
Yeah, we're getting a lot a day. The finger on accept gets sore. Yeah. But anyway, so plant up your containers, even if you're a beginner, and turn them in once a week. Is that right?
Yeah, we're doing a winner every week. So
So what are the prizes?
Every week the winner gets a plant from Progressive, a shrub, and a hanging basket from Olsen's greenhouse. So
it's worth it.
That's the weekly winners, and we'll have 4 of those for the month of May. And then they get chosen as finalists at the end. And all of you, all the subscribers to Utah Gardeners, all the members get to vote out of those 4 finalists.
Oh, I love it.
For the grand champion at the very end. And the grand champion gets $500 in shopping spree at Progressive and
Oh, my
Olsen's.
word. Can I join? No.
You can put this one in. Let's put it up against everybody and see what happens.
We'll
But you're
put it
a
up and
judge
see.
too, so I don't know.
I know. See, that's the point. No, just kidding.
So the grand champion, $500 shopping spree, plus they get to tour the greenhouses, plus the famous Cameron Alcock.
Go plant your darn containers. Do it.
Yeah, Cameron's
That's
gonna
exciting.
come he'll do a design consultation for the winner as well.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh, my word.
a lot of great prizes.
A lot of great prizes. Okay, I'm excited to see all these beautiful containers. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah,
I
thanks for
really
having me, Lloyd.
appreciate this. And go have a wonderful garden adventure.